is out there.
Oh yeah.
All right. As always, we mention OnlyFans before we start recording.
Where the alpha is. Got to get here early.
Yeah, so I don't particularly have like a super structured plan other than just kind of running down the newsletter as well. And I kind of thought there seems to be a lot brewing on the partnership front. So maybe if you're involved in a partnership or have been discussing one, update those, and then we'll talk about Los Angeles and maybe the community framework that the founders are kind of starting to discuss, and then whatever else anyone thinks is important. Does that leave off? Is there anything super important that I'm leaving off? Hey, Amy.
Hello.
Welcome.
I would just add like community engagement, involving the community as a topic, even like from an events perspective, or the next event we'll go to, something that involves the how we want to engage the community more.
Sure, maybe we can start there with just kind of welcoming everyone who's not here that might be watching this later. This is our weekly town hall for JournoDAO. This is the aftermath of the Online News Association trip that a handful of us took last week. So we had a really busy week last week, and so I know myself, I've kind of been having a little bit of downtime, at least downtime from JournoDAO the past couple of days, and actually today spending a lot of time watching a hurricane in Florida. But we are a DAO with a mission to buy a newspaper and give it Web3 superpowers, and so we're doing a whole lot of things along that journey. And so if you're new, the place to check out is probably to start with the website JournoDAO.xyz. You can join our Twitter feed there, and of course there's an application to join the community that gets you access to our Discord server where some of these conversations are going on. So that's like the very short TLDR. And anything else just in terms of what else am I leaving out in terms of getting out the basic deeds for the newer folks? Anything? I don't think so. Okay. So maybe we can just if Keith or Crystal, if you've got it up, maybe we can just move into running through the newsletter and what we've been up to.
Yeah, Crystal, do you want to go first, or you want me?
I want you to go first. I'm still digesting lunch and drinking my coffee. Round number 3 of coffee.
Okay. Yeah. So, I think the big thing was like our O&A recap, which I didn't really feel qualified to have like the definitive download of. So maybe Eric and Spencer and Jennifer could chime in here too. But I think the quick update is just that our talk went really well, aside from like a single vocal troll and or dissenting opinion, whatever you want to call it. And I think we kind of were flying blind in this, like as far as what our audience would be. And then, we did some polling at the beginning, and a lot of people actually were holding Bitcoin and ETH. And so for me, at least, that kind of changed like the beginning level of, or like where I thought we could get to. And so we talked for about half an hour with our slide deck, and then opened it up to questions, and people had some really good questions. A lot of it was around like the environment, which I thought was cool. Eric, do you want to, as you scroll through our triumphant selfie there, we took that in the bar after the presentation.
Yes, but I guess there were, there were kind of multiple phases. The first big thing was, the presentation you were describing, where we did our hour-long, it's basically like a half-hour presentation and then a half hour of Q&A with the audience there. And then the following day, there was a panel, interestingly hosted by the same guy who was our sole very vocal critic. And we can maybe get into that more later. So there was our panel, then there was a Web3 roundtable, where you were either on the side of the room with this guy that was very critical of anything Web3 crypto or blockchain, where you basically, one side of the room was arguing with him, and then the other side of the room that I chose to be on was moderated by a few guys from Hong Kong that had done some research using blockchain, in a lot of the ways to take advantage of its censorship resistance that we talk about. And so we were having a much more informative and educational and productive conversation on that side of the room. So that was event number 2. And then, and then the following day, or I guess actually it was the same day, Spencer and Jen came down, and Evan was already there. And we basically all just hung out, met some other folks, met Blake from Atlanta, who's got a news and blockchain project going on that's pretty interesting. And it was really just like kind of this whirlwind of hanging out, having a few drinks, and I would say like lots of networking, although it did not feel like heavy on the networking at all. It was a lot of fun. That it was kind of like, once the conference was really over, the real fun began. So that was the last night, and that was really great. So those are, like, in my mind, those are like kind of the 3 phases. And then there's like the awful travel phase the following day to get home that I think both Keith and I had to deal with. So yeah, that's my debrief.
Yeah, that's a good summary. Wish I'd taken more photos now, but I put some of them in the newsletter you can check out. And yeah, maybe we could leave it there unless there's any other highlights from either the happy hour or other observations from Jennifer or Spencer. It was like a highlight meeting you two in person. Everything was kind of like a bonus on top of that for me. But we did have some awesome discussions. I think like, Jennifer, some of your ideas that we discussed at the happy hour should like be their own topic like later on, but you had some great ideas. And yeah, I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, I think was one of the things we're gathering is that everybody has a little bit of a different background. And that's what's so great about being in a DAO, especially around the interest that is this one. And how to actually, bring the skills and the interests and desires of each of the community, the community and so forth, to the forefront, and actually kind of allow that to create something new for JournoDAO as well. So yeah, it's just looking at everybody. It doesn't necessarily mean just because maybe someone's not a journalist or accredited journalist, every single person brings something unique. And so that's where I think that the conversation was kind of, I'm storytelling and I'm looking at events, but other people have different skills. And I mean, Spencer has a film background. So it was great to see all of us kind of rallying around sort of this cause to, change the way we work in getting news out there, and or messages or voice or whatever medium it is.
And also, I think the point you just made in the Discord earlier today, Jennifer, about needing the 2 forums, one for consultations about setting up newspapers or just meeting with JournoDAO, and then another one for the moments that you were talking about that could be elaborated into stories. I have one form for the former, but we can still make one for the latter. And I posted it in the chat here, the Google form.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks.
Well, we can talk about that in a little bit if you want, about like all that stuff. I don't want to jump in, but yeah, that's Crystal will know even too what would be good for that, you guys.
Yeah, so I think that's a good summary there. Crystal, do you want to move on to the other stuff? We kind of gave an update in the newsletter.
Sure. We had our spaces last week where Spencer helped me man the mic, and we just kind of riffed and had some really good conversations about, went into some media agenda setting and just wandered around some really good topics, especially around the legislative stuff. So that was fun and exciting. And then really the main other thing in here is our partnership with Doing Good. It's just a community partnership for their DAO that they're getting ready to launch. And they made a public announcement last week about partnership with us and Republic and a couple other DAOs in our little network here. So that's exciting. And yeah, that's about it. Unless I missed something. Yeah, I think that's it.
Spencer, anything new to add about the the DAO coalition? Anything new since last week, or any of the other orgs that you talk with regularly?
Actually, yeah, I don't know if you guys saw. I think Crystal mentioned it in the Discord about Doing Good releasing their manifesto, and how they have, it's essentially a petition that you sign with your Web3 wallet. And I think I'm still waiting on an answer from her, but I asked her if Wendy, if that tool would be usable, or if they're like, if they use some other tool, if they built that out themselves, it would be open source. Because if it is open source, and she said that it could end up being open source, then that could be like a good petitioning tool that we can, whether it's plugs into something that JournoDAO is doing or something across the DAO coalition, that could be a way to get a bunch of DAOs to express alignment on a given statement. So I'm excited about what I hear back from her on that.
All right, so that might be about it for the newsletter wrap up, I think.
Yeah, should we say hi to John here? And John was there with us in LA. We kind of gave our summary, John, but I just wanted to highlight that I think your podcast on it was a good take for anyone who wasn't able to make it.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to repeat some of the things that you guys were saying and that we were talking about, and just some of my thoughts about it. And yeah, man. So I'm glad it captured it well. I was worried about maybe misrepresenting some things.
No, not at all. Do you like my caption I put on the photo there?
Yeah, there's some snarky captions going on here. I noticed that. I strong-armed everyone into going to an Irish pub. I thought I had suavely convinced you that you really wanted to be at the Irish pub with really loud hip hop.
It always seems that way to the narcissists. Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be kind of interesting, just to kind of, if we have any extra time, is like for like 1 to 2 lines of like what are other people working on in this space, like right now here in this town hall. Like obviously we're here together in this DAO, but like are there any other projects you guys are working on? Or I mean, just to understand who, a little bit more of a scope of each person, like what's Amy do, what's Nick do? I don't even know all of that, but if we had any time, if anybody wanted to volunteer, like some of the things they're working on, I think that could be really interesting, but it may not be relatable to this. So yeah. So yeah, if there's time at the end, maybe that'd be a good thing to do. Just so we can learn a little bit more about community stuff, like what everybody does, and 1 to 2 lines about that.
Yeah, I'm open to that.
We can also put that on the Discord too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And I think it helps to get to know the community a little bit, and also a little bit like the lens.
mhm. I think that might help us too. I think the aversion just might be that I don't know if anyone really has described a role for themselves, like within the DAO, like that, you know, everyone feels comfortable saying like, oh, I work on this and I work on this. But maybe that's something we should change and hash through.
I was just even thinking about like, you know, John has a podcast. I didn't really realize that. And then, you know, Crystal's part of a lot of DAOs and social impact DAOs, and I'm learning that, you know. But I mean, that's information I've kind of picked up, you know, and so I just thought it'd be interesting to understand. Like, I don't even know what Eric does for a living. He could be a dog watcher for all I know.
Eric's
Are
like the
you?
sole working journalist in this group.
Yeah, no, it would be just cool to understand a little bit about, yeah, you know, the community um, in the space. Yeah.
I mean, I, if anyone wants to do that, I'm down for it. I could actually go last because what I would have to share could lead into pretty well into another topic. I don't know if we have people here that are you know game for maybe there's people that have something prepared and they've just been waiting to be asked for all these weeks and all these months of attending town halls.
Well, I'll just go quick and say that I'm a developer, and the stuff I'm excited about working on for JournoDAO are like the website, like our IT stuff, like forum and blog stuff, and then like a web app for the Journo token that you'll hear discussed from time to time. And yeah, Spencer, how would you put yourself in context?
Sure. Yeah. So my other Web3 kind of roles or obligations is I'm helping lead Lobby 3, which is still a pretty a similar situation where no formal roles are given to anyone, but there's just, you know, things people do. That may change as we incorporate. We're going through that process right now. And in PubDAO, I mainly help with business development, and that's going in an interesting direction. So it's those two, and then I'm also helping coordinate the DAO coalition. So those, and then in JournoDAO, that's my Web3 life.
Yeah, and maybe I should say that outside of JournoDAO, I'm working on a project called Republic, which is like a set of tools for people to collect and visualize their personal data, and in Factland, which is like one of our partner / incubator projects, crowdsourcing, fact checking.
Yeah, so in Web3 world, I am obviously JournoDAO, just kind of do whatever needs to be done until we have more bandwidth. I enjoy working with, I have my hands in a handful of other DAOs, mostly as kind of just an advisor, start as contributing, and then they get a little chaotic, so I'm trying to trim down all of that, but mostly impact DAOs. Also building out my NFT, whatever you want to call that thing, to hopefully fund my DAO life adventure until things are sustainable. And I'm also academic, back getting a degree in yoga, and also doing some academic projects with blockchain and archiving ancient wisdom. And I think I've left off like 5 or 10 other things that I'm in, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah, so I mean, for JournoDAO, I'm like really attracted to the possibility of live events or broadcasting events in the realm of like, how you guys share story in the written word, but actually creating like some fun ways around sharing story on stage. So giving journalists a platform with voice or storytellers. And then, yeah, just advising, doing research on the metaverse and advising clients on getting into it, and always taking a human centric approach to Web3 and all my projects. And I also run a meditation academy, with teachers around the world, just like kind of application to post certification.
This is Amy. Is it my time? Do I wait for others?
You go.
Yeah, I'm actually in a lot of DAOs, probably 10 plus, and mostly I'm in community building. And if they needed to help in putting grants together, I kind of help out, and sales and marketing. I'm in 3 Web3 projects right now. I'm doing I'm also in the metaverse in Voxel. We create offices, what you call this, events in the metaverse, and we uh, we customize whatever you want to do in the metaverse through Voxel. So that's one of that, and I just launched during my birthday an initiative, 1 billion to Web3 initiative, and it's basically to proper onboard people and communities to Web3 to attain global equity in wealth generation. And then with that, I'm a co-founder of Web3 D app, D-commerce, that's gonna be used for P2P, B2B, B2C transactions on Web3. And I also started learning social media marketing because I know I need it. I need it for
Wow.
everything I'm doing. And if you are in LinkedIn, you need to we need to connect and follow each other because all professionals are on fire in LinkedIn. So I don't know if you all have a LinkedIn profile, but
Yeah, JournoDAO does.
mine is the same, Amy Marcella. If you need to find me, I'm there. But and also IRL, I'm in sustainability. I do sales and marketing in solar, and they just put me on board as a co-founder because I've been giving them a lot of ideas. So it's just a lot on my plate, but I do have a passion for writing because both my parents are writers, and that's what attracted me to join a DAO. I grew up in the martial law era, so a lot of that writing has been suppressed. But
Well done.
if it's in me, because I know that both my parents are, I just want to explore that part. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Do either the Johns or the the Johns or the Nick? I think we're down. No pressure, but down to you three if you want to share.
I'll go. So I've been just trying to like convert people to the idea that there's value to learning about how to get information out of cryptocurrency. And the background that I have is I was doing digital marketing for Mass Network for about a year. So I did a lot of coordination with people in East Asia, And I've also been doing a lot recently of trying to like half bake investigations and then find a way to tap into other people's skills to finish them or learn the skills myself. One of the things I am working on right now, I think is finally about to actually happen, is Decrypt is going to be forming a small experiment with 3 analysts and a couple of journalists from Decrypt. And it's gonna be me. We're gonna try to get Zach XBT, he's not in yet, and some third person to see if we can build a business model for getting tips to journalists using on-chain analytics. I've also got a meeting, I think this week or next week, with OCCRP to talk about the same topic, but not with Decrypt specifically, just, these are some ways to get information. Do you know how to do this? And if not, why don't you? So that's kind of been my whole thing for the past 6 months or so. And I'm just unemployed and, doing this in my spare time because it's easy and I like it.
Other John, you want to go?
Sure. I'm driving and about ready to pick up my youngest from school. I currently work at Xavier University. There's a video production program there, and I'm the TV studio manager for it. And I used to work at WCPO Channel 9 in Cincinnati, which is where I currently live. And I worked there for about 10 years, doing all kinds of different technical jobs. Was never a journalist, but definitely grew to love and appreciate the game and saw a lot of people get laid off. I would love for JournoDAO or some Web3 something to figure out some ways to save journalism, because the money is drying up badly. And that's the quick and short of it.
Weren't we talking about Cincinnati, me, Eric, and Keith, trying to find some things that stand out about Cincinnati besides the baseball team?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the joke. And it's like not totally like off, but we're just like that real generic, just not a lot going on.
It's a pretty city.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, nice hills, And I guess I'll go now. I have spent a lot of time in Web3 working with BanklessDAO. I founded the podcast Hatchery there, and we sprouted 4 shows from there. I, of course, started all this journey through just switching on the YouTube channel and just being candid about how ignorant I am about crypto and just trying to figure things out and just look over projects as I go along live on the internet, making mistakes and assumptions and getting things wrong. And some people have apparently liked that. So my journey through BanklessDAO has been really cool. I've been a core member there. And then I've gotten more involved with a podcast that came out of BanklessDAO called Crypto Sapiens, which, besides JournoDAO, is my other main project that I work on a lot. I'm a core member there. I'm the AV lead. It's expanding. Humpty Calderon was the host, and he is the host of the main show, but we've done some mini series. And the reason I wanted to go last was because I wanted to talk about, we are just launched a Web3 ID mini series with 4 episodes, and it goes through the basics, funding, some other topics in Web3 ID to fully cover, and just not anybody from one particular project, but just Web3 ID in general. And they've hosted them on Twitter Spaces. And then we did a series called Decentralized, which is covered decentralized science, and Flow Science was the host of that. And again, covered in 4 series, a lot of different topics within decentralized science. So I have made a proposal, or I'm presenting it this Friday, but I've gotten a soft consensus to do a mini series on journalism. And so I would love it to, and I talked with Eric about this. I would love to see a good podcast come out of JournoDAO, with the JournoDAO people and representing JournoDAO. I would love to apply some of the same principles that I've learned producing the podcast in the Hatchery and in Bankless DAO to here. And then, but first, because there's no audience or anything like that, I would like to create a journalism mini series in Crypto Sapiens. Call it DiGiorno, like the pizza, and maybe put it in the same font. And then, have guests on, have JournoDAO peeps on. Maybe we can get Evan as well to talk about journalism from his perspective and from working for a large company like Twitter. Maybe we can get some Mirror XYZ people to come in and talk, and just do like a Twitter Spaces panel style. The first episode would be like, what's the problem with journalism now, and then what is decentralized journalism, a whole what is definitions type of show, and then the second one, maybe we talk about funding, or, and then, yeah. And then, I have 4 different show topics laid out, and I'd like to make some kind of formal, I'd like for you guys to see the formal proposal. But with the audience that Crypto Sapiens has, they have a good audience. It'd be a good way to lay a foundation and a recognition for the JournoDAO to be able to move that mini series and everything that it's built over into JournoDAO after that, and create our own podcast riding on the coattails of what we've established with the mini series. So that's my proposal.
I think that's fantastic, and just like whatever needs to be done to make that happen, I think let us know. And I'm thinking of other people that could be good for that, like Maggie, who's kind of become our buddy from International Center for Journalists, might be good. This guy that did a presentation at ONA that runs the, oh man, I hate the name of this thing. It's like the Content Authenticity Initiative that's doing some interesting stuff.
Content Authenticity Initiative. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
The dudes that I was talking about from Hong Kong, we spent some time with them. They're like doing stuff that is like kind of, they're like the stuff that we're talking about, they're like actually doing it already in Hong Kong. So yeah, I think we've made some good friends recently that could be great for that, actually.
Nice. Yeah, so I've got Crypto Sapiens informally on board, and this Friday we'll finalize it and lay it all out and vote on it, which it's going to pass. And then it'd be great to have everybody here on there. Traditionally in the past, they've been done with Twitter Spaces, but the audio is so terrible on Twitter Spaces that I would like to do it on something like Zencaster or Restream, which I have a Restream subscription to, where we could all log in and do this style, and then it would export it all as separate tracks, so I can clean up the audio and edit it and everything like that. Put the Crypto Sapiens music on the front, create kind of an intro, explaining what's going on each episode, and then in an outro. That's how we've been doing these. And so far, we've just published the first episode of W3ID and got an amazing response. So yeah.
Is that in the Crypto Sapiens feed?
Yes.
Cool. Did you get to connect with Humpty in LA after all?
I didn't. I was rushing around on the way to that round table, which I was late to anyway. And he said to meet him at Go Get Him Tiger Coffee, and I didn't realize there was more than one location. So I ended up like at the music hall or something.
LA, nobody tells you LA is big.
Yeah, I know. But it's no sweat, like I've met Humpty a few times now. So
yeah, he seems to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I just listened to that the Web3 ID episode. Is really great, and learned a lot. And that's a great idea. Appreciate you with that.
And after we finish the DiGiorno one, we would like to do Infinite Homie. She's over there, and she's awesome, and she's been really focused on working in Web3 and what that's like. And she wants to focus on like Web3 from an operational standpoint. And she's going to do a mini series on that. So, yeah.
Very cool.
So are the mini series a select number of episodes under
4.
the umbrella of Crypto Sapiens?
Yes. And they started asking about, oh, is this a JournoDAO collaboration? Can we get funding from? I was like, hold on. Like we're just trying to figure things out too, so let's just, we'll have people from JournoDAO on there, and then so I wanted to slow that down before the the funding questions start coming into play because nobody has any money.
But the mission is just to kind of explore and discover how journalists are using Web3.
Yeah, like why Web3 is needed in journalism and what are some of the tools. So yeah. I think what Decentralized did, they started the first episode with what is decentralized science, and then the second one was what are some tools. The third one was about funding, and then the fourth one was about public goods. Decentralized as a public good. So, and they had I guess experts in decentralized science and those specific topics of it. Keith was on it. So yeah. And you did a great job from an outside, from a non-science point of view, but from a data perspective, coming in and talking about some things that were very relevant.
And then do those series get put into like an academy or something? Because
that's a good idea. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's informative knowledge, so that's why I was wondering.
I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, hopefully we can all create something of such substantial value that it would be could put into an academy. That's what I'm aiming for.
Well, and I think too, this is a great precursor to what we've talked about a little bit internally, is having our own podcast. And
Exactly.
people are already starting to reach out to us to come on their podcast. So it both gives us a platform to explore topics together and then cultivate narratives and then drop those narratives into communities. Because I'm seeing that is extremely important right now. As the media begins to form narratives about our space, we need to be a vocal voice, not just in our own community, but be able to drop into other communities and put these narratives out so then other people can talk about them and spread them on like a Schelling point of narratives, essentially.
Yeah, I like the framework in terms of, how you've done it. You've labeled it like a mini series, but it's live, so it doesn't have to be all plotted out and planned out. So something like that for JournoDAO could be like 4 or 5 key topics that go into guests or panels, and then it gets recorded, and then you have yourself a bit of an onboarding program so that we don't have to get crazy about having to do all the recording. It just gets done live. Some sort of nice format for that is really good. I like the way you've structured.
Yeah, and it's fairly easy to clean up afterwards, and you just cut out some of the I'm losing reception, and all that type of stuff, and just make it a conversation. So
one thing you could maybe take back to the Crypto Sapiens group in terms of like how a collaboration work. John and I talked like really briefly in LA about like, does it make sense for this thing to live in the JournoDAO YouTube channel or to be a Crypto Sapiens thing? And it's like Crypto Sapiens at this point has a bigger audience than our YouTube channel with 10 subscribers. So I think that makes more sense. But I think one thing you could take back is if we were able to like at the end of each episode just like shill our founder NFT for 30 seconds or something, being like, oh yeah, find more at journaldao.xyz and we're selling this founder NFT. If we were to sell a handful of founder NFTs off of those episodes, I would certainly be more than happy to put a proposal forward to this community that we use some of those funds to then underwrite the next Crypto Sapiens documentary series or podcast series.
That would be awesome. Yeah. And just kind of do it as a cross collab type of thing where, yeah, we do a little plug for the NFT at the end. And then, yeah, maybe some kind of, percentage or whatever would go, I don't know. Yeah. But they would be totally down for that for sure.
I think if we do something like that, we'd need some little form, some like Google form, so that we can attribute which wallets purchasing founder NFT learned about it through Crypto Sapiens. But that's easy. There's just a couple questions on a form. So otherwise we wouldn't be able to tell.
Yeah, I mean,
Agreed.
we're not selling them like crazy right now. So that idea relies on the fact that it's going to be kind of easy to tell. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, or just like a vanity URL so that we know like things that are minted from that URL are different.
Yeah, some tracking something. Yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't record all these like back to back on a daily thing. They did it once a week for 4 weeks in a row. And that's pretty much what we would do. And then it sat there for like a month before they got edited. And so, I mean, it's kind of a slow process, but it's all done now. So yeah.
I gotta run, guys. Sorry to miss the community conversation. So I gotta go to class.
Thanks, Crystal.
Bye. We're not-
Seems like she was already in the class. Well, John, thanks for thinking of us, and I think I'm really excited to work with you on that. I think that'll be cool. So I can do my little thing, and then this can maybe lead into another discussion. Yeah, who I am. I've technically been a freelance journalist for 20 years. I did start in public radio, running a couple of stations in rural Alaska right out of college, and then freelancing for NPR and doing some other broadcast stuff, and then that kind of funneled into covering science and tech full-time freelance. That's been 12 years now, and the vast I'm technically freelance, but the vast majority of what I write is for either Forbes or CNET, because I've had contracts with both of them for a decade. So I cover a lot of space. Whatever is on Elon Musk's calendar tends to dictate what's on my calendar. I'm trying to get away from that a little bit. So a lot of space, a lot of climate stuff, earth science, planetary science, and then increasingly some crypto. I actually always kept an eye on crypto, but was never super excited about it for several years, because it just seemed like one speculative thing after another without a ton of utility, until really the first thing that I saw that I was like, oh, there's something else happening here with these dApps and Web3 and stuff, was a little site that I swear nobody else has ever heard of, called Twetch, which is totally a Twitter clone, but it runs off of BSV, the Bitcoin Satoshi version.
John, can we bleep that out later?
Yeah. The absolute whatever that is. But it was like, you had a wallet with BSV in it, and you use that to, basically, if you wanted to like somebody's tweet, to like it, you had to actually send them a little micro payment of crypto. And I was like, oh, okay, that is, the thing clicked on, and I was like, this has actual utility. And then from there, I found out about Mirror, and from there, I found out about Web3 and DAOs, and spent about 9 months just in a variety of DAOs, some that have already been mentioned here, some that shall not be mentioned, and then decided to focus on JournoDAO. And so I was listening to the town hall from last week, that I was in LAX while you guys were talking, trying to navigate to an Uber. And I finally listened to that while I was running the other day. And then also Keith's document about happy DAOs or happiness in DAOs, I think started circulating again. So I read through that again. And while everyone was talking to I think Miles in particular, the conversation about how so many organizations kind of wind up being toxic in one way or another. I started thinking about all the different organizations that I've been involved with over the last couple decades, and as a freelancer, there's a lot, and then also like a lot of community projects that I've been involved with. I've been involved with a few charter schools and school board stuff and other community things. And I would say the majority of those orgs, definitely, there was something that they trended toxic. And even the ones that weren't toxic, there's an organization I'm still involved with now, that it's not toxic, it's great, everyone has fun. But that's all that seems to happen is the fun, like nothing else actually gets done. So those seem to be like the two options, like either it's toxic or like it's a social club. But there's one organization that I'm involved with that really stands out as managing to not be toxic and also managing to be super effective. And so I just kind of wanted to give an overview, and because I think there's some things to learn that kind of mirror what like we've been talking about, and maybe some lessons going forward. And that organization is Taos Search and Rescue, that I've been involved with for about 4 years now. And so over the last couple of days, I've been kind of thinking of what are some of the parallels and some of the things that they do that are successful that could work for DAOs. And just kind of right off the bat, everyone in Taos Search and Rescue is an unpaid volunteer. So right away, that basically aligns everyone on mission and motive. At least on mission, because you can still, like, ego can still be a big motive for this kind of stuff, and maybe like adrenaline junkies. So, but everyone's, Taos Search and Rescue, it's pretty obvious what the mission is there. And you certainly at least take the greed element out of it. So that's that's kind of an important factor to this. But the way it's set up is it is set up in a hierarchical way. Like there is a president, and then we have all of these different units. So there's like a winter unit, and there's like a mountain bike unit, and there's like a climbing unit, and different swiftwater for river rescue stuff. And each of those units has a leader. So technically there's some hierarchy, but we have our president is a woman who's been running things for about like 15 years, and like all the time, constantly, every meeting, talks about how everyone is equal. Like, yes, there's a president, yes, there's a board, but like it is in the culture that there's a hierarchy for certain reasons, but we are all peers, and everyone is the same among the group. It is pounded into the culture, and I think that's important. And the other things, there is before you can go on any trainings, there's about any missions, there's about a year of training. So everyone goes through the same period of learning and acculturation and getting used to the way things are done. Also some necessary skills, obviously, that you have to have. And then you once you go through the training that everyone has to have, there's a self-selection. You select into what roles you want to be in. So this is kind of like we've talked about, like what we're doing right now, this exercise of trying to get everyone's figure out what everyone's background and skills and interests are. So there's plenty of people that aren't particularly athletic, and those people can work on the the communications, or like sit in the van and run the radios. There's reporting that has to be done, fundraising. So everyone's welcome, and then kind of self-sorted by their different skill sets or interests. And which gets to another part, which is like absolutely everything is opt-in voluntarily. up to the point of, you know, like a search and rescue mission. Like once you're on a mission, you know, we operate under the authority usually of the New Mexico State Police, and then there's like a trained incident commander that's usually been trained by FEMA. And it, like, once you are in mission mode, it is actually super hierarchical, and it is basically like military command and control. But the thing is, like, you can opt in and out of that hierarchical command structure at any moment, and you're expected to. Like the moment you become uncomfortable with something, I mean, it can literally be like, I think maybe my blood sugar is low, but so you can tap out. And there's expectations set that not only is that expected, that's encouraged. And that's another thing that I think maybe we could take away from this is there's this when you're on a search and rescue mission, this thing that we're all trained to memorize is what your priorities are at any given moment on a mission, and actually on a training. And I think this could apply to DAOs as well. So like if you're out in the wilderness and you're doing a training or you're trying to find somebody, like your first priority is always to yourself and your own safety and your own health and well-being. Your second priority is to your teammates' health and well-being. Your third priority is the public's safety, health, and well-being. And your fourth priority is the person you're looking for, is the actual goal. So that kind of gets into, you know, what a lot of what Keith was writing about is like it's actually more about the method and the means than it is the goal. Because the worst, and I've seen this happen, the worst thing that can happen on a search and rescue mission is you get so focused on trying to find the person that you don't take care of yourself, or you don't take care of your teammates, and they get in trouble. And there was this mission where we basically had to haul a bunch of gear up to the top of mountain, up to about 12,000 feet in a snowstorm. And we were trying to get up there before nightfall, when it was supposed to go from little snowstorm to blizzard. And there was somebody up there that was like, they had been out overnight and they were dehydrated and they were hypothermic. We had to get this like big sled of supplies up to them. And so there was like a local volunteer fire department that was like, they really wanted to jump in and help, but you know, they hadn't been trained in search and rescue. They didn't even have the right clothing, but they just kind of were like, yeah, we're going to do it. And so they were just kind of following us up there. And you know, a mile up the trail, a guy starts having an asthma attack from this other group. And so suddenly me and the other people that I'm with, so we now have to prioritize, okay, do we take care of this, of getting up there to this person that's like, well, I don't know. I mean, they'd already been up there for a night and they were hypothermic. It was a bad situation. But in other words, we now have two missions. We have this asthmatic guy next to us, and then this dude up at the base of the mountain. So, you know, again, that gets into, you can get too focused on the goal, and then the collateral damage becomes, you know, you or your own teammates. So I think those were all the parallels that I came up with. But yeah, that's what I've been thinking about over the last couple of days, and that's me.
Yeah, I like the prioritization list. And yeah, I don't know, in previous jobs I've always wanted to point out that we're like actually not on a search and rescue mission. Like lives are not at stake, but like people are acting like they there are. Right. Bye, Jennifer.
You know, and there's like I talked to, you know, some of the folks that have been on the team longest, is, you know, when everyone, so like you typically get a call and you're supposed to show up at a place, and there's, you know, the like incident commander, and then you know, they'll kind of divide you up into teams, like, okay, you three go this way, you three go that way, you guys man the radios, you know, whatever. And so I was talking to this guy that's, you know, run a lot of these incidents, and he's like, the first thing you do when all your volunteers show up is you kind of size them up, and whoever seems most eager and most excited, you don't let them out of your sight. those are not the people that you send on like the forward team, to go charge you up the mountain. Those are the people who are like, hey, maybe help me run radios.
Yeah.
Because it's more about keeping an even head and looking out for yourself and the people around you.
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, again, I think there's parallels there with Web3.
Yeah, and you think that just falls out of those kind of the training structure and like the kind of encoded priorities, but it seems like maybe also the people who are just drawn to that kind of volunteer work.
I mean, no, I actually think it has a lot to do with the specific individuals that run things now, particularly with our president and like the people that are kind of in charge are very, very deliberate about these things. When I first moved to Taos, it's something I've always kind of been interested in. So like 15 years ago, I actually went and showed up to a meeting for the same group that I'm talking about, but it was under different leadership at the time, and was actually under leadership of this guy that he's like a rock climbing like legend who happens to live here, and so like he was just kind of in charge because like, oh, he's the most experienced guy. But like it didn't have they didn't bother with like trying to instill any kind of first principles culture or any of this stuff. It was definitely more like a cowboy, like, all right, time to go get them, and I didn't stick around for it. It was only several years later that somebody else was like, yeah, you should check it out again. It's totally different. So no, I don't actually think it's like a self-selecting thing. I think it's a deliberate thing that was created over years.
So what I guess it'd be interesting just to get down to like, what do you think is reproducible about it? And I don't know, what specifically could we like do or bring over?
I mean, I guess I think I bring it up because it seems like we're already kind of doing it. And so like, for me, it was like it was an example that was affirming of a lot of the things that you've said and the things that we've discussed, but maybe putting some of those things specifically to paper, like that in particular, that priority list, where you almost have already written it, where it's like you would just replace the the search subject with whatever goal or project is at hand. And I think so the priority is yourself, your teammates, and 3 means like the public, like around you, like don't endanger any other hikers. But in our case, maybe it really does mean the public, like everyone.
Yeah, that's where I went in my head when you said that, is like, oh yeah, that should be part of like our written ethos, or yeah, I've had a week to think about these words. I still haven't haven't hit the thesaurus.
And I guess also, the idea of being able to opt in and opt out at any point. Like I think that's kind of already baked into DAOs, but so that's kind of affirming of that. And it makes it easier to opt in when the expectations are very clearly laid out, and part of the expectations being very clearly laid out is having to go through a year of training. So like, what to expect. You spent a year getting familiar with what's going to be expected of you when you're finally ready. And it kind of seems like we're going through that phase right now. It feels like right now we're like kind of working out what our training program might be. And maybe that's more of what like the community framework discussion is too. in the Web3 world, I think we would call this onboarding, like working out like what the onboarding is, and like maybe being as clear as we can about what expectations are. And then when I was like thinking in my head, okay, well, this is like search and rescue is like, it's a very narrow scope. Like it's like that's like a very specific thing. Like you're just trying to find somebody, whereas we're talking about trying to reinvent journalism. And it's so maybe what we're doing is broad, but the reality is like when you're like on the ground, like in the wilderness trying to find somebody, something always happens that you didn't train for or prepare for. And there's tons of improvisation. I still think it's more narrow, obviously, than what we're talking about. But there is this kind of improvisation and creativity that is like accepted, understood, and expected under the situation. The thing is, as long as you're operating within these key principles, key priorities of who you're protecting first, then that informs the way that you improvise. So it's just about like having these overarching priorities and principles, I think, that we're kind of working out now. So like even though maybe we're operating in this like broad world of experimenting in journalism and Web3, like if we can define the like ethics, principles, and priorities of how we do that, like that's what can be taken away from it, I think. And that's part of why,
Can I ask a
like, I don't know,
question, you
there's like,
guys?
yeah, go ahead, Amy. So I'm just talking. Go ahead.
Sorry, because I gotta bounce in a few. Did we apply with GitHub grant already? Because some of my DAOs have already applied.
GitHub or Gitcoin?
Oh, Gitcoin. I'm sorry. Did we already?
Yeah, I mean, we had our grant active for the last campaign. We seem to consistently raise about $300 and then get like about a couple dollars of matching.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know how my other DAOs are raising, but they're raising like 3,000, 6,000. So maybe you need to tweak your application a little bit. Just kidding. And then I have a question on that founders NFT. How much is it again?
The founders NFT is
Your
2 ETH, yeah.
2 what?
2
Say
ETH.
that again, you were
Here,
breaking up.
I'll post it in here.
2 ETH. Okay. In if that's the case, have you tried attaching a utility with that? Like if a current newspaper wants to learn about Web3, then they can buy a founder's coin and we can go, teach them how that works. Because most NFT at that price, 2 ETH, has to have something attached to it.
I mean, that's actually an interesting idea. If we move forward in this direction of consulting newspapers, that could maybe be the consultation fees that they buy one of the founders NFTs.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Because if it's at that price, you need to have a give to the community. You know what I mean? And NFTs now are very popular if there's a utility attached to it.
Yeah,
So that's just a thought. Maybe you need to put together something. And surely when that happens, it'll be easier to sell the founders NFT because you have something to give back. So
yeah, I mean, sort of the promise of the founders NFT is that it kind of operates as a lifetime membership to JournoDAO. So as we build out utility along the way, like you're basically whatever it is that we build, if you've got one of those NFTs, you get it. Like you get that.
Yeah,
that's
but
kind of
if
the
they
promise
don't know Web3,
Mhm.
that's a struggle.
Mhm.
You have to at least introduce them to something. Probably put out a YouTube video or whatever, and share it to the people that they work with, their employees, because If you can sell that founder's NFT to these newspapers and let them on board on Web3, you've done something. So, and whatever progress we do in the future, there's still, you know, like you said, it's a lifetime membership. They can access to that. So basically what I'm trying to say, maybe two is too much for one person, but if we sell it to people that want to learn about Web3 and come on board as, you know, newspapers and all that, then we could probably do a better sell on it, is what I'm saying. If that is something that you all want to go, the direction you want to go. It's just an idea, and I always come up with ideas. So I'm just sharing it with you guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is the direction that we want to go.
Yeah, I think I mean, initially just because everyone's kind of doing the hard sell on NFTs, like we didn't really want to jump into that pool, but I think we can get a little bit more focused on like concrete like things that this gives you access to. I think the educational content I would want to like make public eventually, but there could either be like a, I don't know, a early access thing or like, you know, personal. I think like giving access to like us personally and like our, you know, either like one-on-one or group consultations is pretty good and easy.
Thanks, Spencer. Thanks for dropping all that stuff in the chat and that forum as well.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer.
Sorry about your pipe.
Anyway, it's something to think about. And my initiative is for the initial onboarding. So if you feel like you want to use that part for Web 2 to Web 3, once I put it together, you're more than welcome to take part. It's a free thing for people and communities. The monetization part on my initiative is for sponsors to, you know, pay in so that it will be free for other people. So once that's together, we can partner and you can do the onboarding on my side on the initial, and then you can take over after that. It's 1 billion to Web3. So y'all need to get busy.
Is that a website or a Twitter? Like, where do we find that?
I told you I'm in LinkedIn. Are you in LinkedIn, Eric?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Okay.
Okay. Hit me a
Okay.
link or something, and I will send you my soft launch. It's still built. We're still building the curriculum, but I did do an initial post. That way I know the date that I started it. It was on my birthday, and it's actually the legacy that I want to live this earth. So anyways,
cool.
Find me on LinkedIn, and as we go forward, we can collaborate on that. I can do the initial onboarding, then y'all can take over after that. Whatever people that you have to come aboard. So there's a lot of people out there who doesn't know Web3. So we have to go get them, Tiger. Thank you guys. I have to hop out. I have another meeting, so we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. See you soon.
All right. So any further debrief from Web3 or anything? I mean, Web3, O&A or anything?
I don't think so. I think we just need to be sure to like capture all the stuff that we talked about and share it and actually, you know, keep pushing that stuff forward. Like I think Jennifer's ideas about events. If she wants to pursue that, that would be awesome. I don't know, just a lot of good brainstorming that came up that we should all collectively try and put down somewhere.
So like I'm beginning to think, like I put together a Notion page that basically is like everyone that we've come across that could be like a potential partner or funder. And like I'm beginning to think that my time might be best spent basically fundraising, just to try to get some resources to begin to do some of these things. But I'm but then I decided like it probably makes sense to hold off on doing anything until we maybe have some of these community framework conversations that might better inform ways to go about that. And like when I say fundraising, I guess I'm thinking of like both grants, but also like the stuff that Amy's talking about, like what are our best strategies for trying to sell more founder NFTs, and kind of looking at how to get a hold of some resources in a more holistic way for like all options.
Keith, you can go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask, I mean, is that interesting to you? Or does it feel like you're forced in that direction because we're kind of hitting a spot where like just having funding would make a lot of things more easy?
I think I'm like, when it comes to like grant writing and stuff, like I'm pretty good at it, like, and I don't particularly mind doing it. I mean, the other thing to do would be to like, kind of jump into like in kind of the way that you jumped into working on the Journo token. Like I could jump into like, trying to produce more content. I mean, I have some ideas like about, basically think like content that we could produce. Like I think it would be interesting to do like a series on impact DAOs where you kind of, go in and get to know a few impact DAOs that are like really actually doing something. Like I would probably start with something like Klima and like tell the story of Klima like from like a real like as like kind of a feature from a journalistic perspective, like you're writing a feature, because there's tons of stuff about impact DAOs out there right now, but it's all marketing. So it would be good to like do a series about impact DAOs, like as as a journalist, and I think that can kind of help build our network, and that could encourage some founder NFT sales. But it's kind of a big lift, and like if I were to do that right now, I would just kind of be doing it by myself, like in my spare time with my spare energy to do more writing that I don't really have. So it would make more sense to try to get some more resources to bring in some other writers that we could pay to make that a team effort. So like that's kind of the decision tree that's in my head there of like what makes the most sense for me to spend my effort. Yeah, John.
Sorry, I don't necessarily want to get too off topic, and so like if you guys wanted to continue talking about that specific area, please go ahead. Mine was kind of a little more macro, talking about JournoDAO, but not specifically fundraising and such.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So like kind of I feel like and I'm still trying to get a good grasp of kind of what's going on with JournoDAO. It seems like there's an idea of being able to introduce Web3 tools to journalists that can help them Also, it also kind of seems like JournoDAO is occasionally or kind of also just doing basic journalism on Web3 stuff, like you were saying, like, you know, doing some pieces on impact DAOs and stuff and how those are going. So that's more of like actually doing journalism, but that's not really relying upon Web3 tools, at least for your part as the journalist. And I like, in talking about being able to, you know, help a newspaper potentially, you know, get into Web3. My question is like, and apologies if I've totally missed this, or maybe I just forgot it, but like, what would you say are some of the current Web3 tools that we immediately know right now that we could confidently, like, you know, recommend to some newspaper that wanted to get into Web3? I guess I'm just a little fearful that like we still have a lot to figure out, and maybe I'm wrong, and I guess I just want to kind of get on the same page with everyone.
No, I mean, I don't think anything you said is wrong. I mean, the tools that exist, like, yeah, if you were, and we kind of said this at ONA in terms of like, you know, like what's out there now that a newspaper could start experimenting with. Like it's really like, it's like just like start experimenting with NFTs. Like that's kind of like the main tool that's accessible. And I think there's like, you know, at this Web3 roundtable, you know, we were talking about like decentralization and like why that's important, and like, you know, how we could put things on chain, you know, to make them for like fact checking and authenticity checking purposes and censorship resistant. And there was a reporter from USA Today sitting next to me that's like, cool, like where do we go to do that? Like how do you do that? Like what do we do? And we're like, no, like you can't do it, right? Like there's no tools for that right now. Like, and it was like, you have to help us build those tools. That's why we're here. But like what's available now, like, and what there is to recommend, like it's kind of only NFTs, I think, right? What am I missing? Unless I'm not thinking of anything.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's mostly right. It's kind of, you know, a set of solutions looking for a little bit more evolution to reach like the solving of like real today problems. I think my main ask to like newsrooms would be like, get started on this stuff now in the experimental phase, so that you're not just playing by everybody else's rules when like the apps do come, and when like the use cases do start getting solved, that like you want to have your use cases like be those ones that are being considered and being solved for, as like the abstractions come on, as like the actual apps that like just do like a real concrete thing come on. And there's enough here to start doing to like see the potential, like just signing on with a wallet to like multiple websites instead of having like 8 different accounts, I think is just like a concrete like, oh, this is better. Like it's a pain in the ass to like get a wallet set up and like start thinking in seed phrases instead of like, you know, username, password. But once you do that, then it's like a small kind of aha, like, oh, this is actually better. And like, I don't have to put all my info out there to do internet stuff.
The other thing, John, that I think might be, you know, we're at this point where we got a couple $1,000s in a treasury. We don't really have a ton of resources. We're like basically operating off of people's curiosity, passion, and interest, including me and everyone else in this room. And so like at this phase, it's kind of funny because it's like we can try anything right now. So that's why I think it probably seems like maybe so broad, like, okay, we're talking about this, but we're also doing this other thing. It's like, because we're still kind of open to anything, and like whatever anyone is willing to like experiment and run with. Like I mean, I think we support like that kind of experimentation, and to see like what we can learn from it to like integrate into this bigger picture. And you know, it's kind of funny, like as resources come in, then that may narrow the focus more. And I think why we're talking about this community framework this week is like we have to figure out a way that when those resources start to come in and the focus starts to narrow, that then it doesn't suck the passion and the curiosity out of it. Like how do we preserve that? So yeah, we're like moving really slowly, and you know, I think an admittedly kind of vague and amorphous way, and that's why.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like to be clear, like I think that's great to go slow, and just kind of feel it out and kind of go the directions that kind of things, you know, show themselves to explore. But I'm also just kind of wondering if like, because to me it seems like there is immediately potentially a need for kind of a place where other journalists that are already in Web3 or thinking about getting into Web3, those sorts of things, can get a faster, quicker access to resources that are happening. And I wonder if something that maybe JournoDAO could explore is gathering resources and talking to other, like that you were talking about. There's some people in Hong Kong that are already kind of doing some stuff. Like I would love to know what they're doing and what they've already learned and what is potentially working. And I know that there are some other things out there that are doing some here and there. And I wonder if there's a way we could start like coalition. I don't know if that's the right term or whatever, or if JournoDAO is in fact the thing that brings a lot of these together, so that like we can keep this open source network going and actually like really benefit from being able to talk to somebody across the world immediately. I just wonder, I'm so desperate to find about more of these people actually doing stuff with these tools in journalism, because I think that's the thing that whenever I talk to anybody about it, that's what they want to know. And so like I'm just like super hungry to try to gather as much of that as possible.
I can tell you that the two guys from Hong Kong, they are in the Discord server, actually. I think one of them introduced himself pretty recently. You know, one group that we haven't really reached out to that I keep thinking we should, I'm not quite sure what the premise would be, but that's ACJR. It's like the Association of Cryptocurrency Journalists and Researchers. And you know, they're basically people that write about crypto. And like at first it didn't seem like they quite fit the mission, because like we're more like hoping to work with, you know, traditional journalists and like bring like, you know, people that are covering, you know, the wider world as opposed to focusing on crypto. We want to bring them into the conversation. But I think what we're finding is, you know, like at this, I mean, so I've gone to, you know, these two events in the last month with that are media focused, and what I'm finding is most these like traditional media people, they've got a long way to go. I mean, such a long way to go. Like it's hard to get them to even sign up for Discord, and they're just kind of like, okay, so explain decentralization to me again. So like, yeah, those, so like basically the traditional media people, like they might not be here for a while. So yeah, maybe it's time to just be like, okay, we should maybe be, you know, partnering up more with the people that are already here, even if they're like laser focused on crypto, like whatever they're, you know, we should probably all be building this stuff together.
And I think that I think one thing that, like, I think the need for onboarding traditional journalists into Web3 is super important. And I would agree 1000%, especially living in Cincinnati. They're a million miles away from getting in. And it is really hard to just get them to accept for a moment that it's not a scam. So, and I've had a lot of personal conversations with people that like trust me and like me, my own brother, like it takes a long time to get there. But anyway, like I think that might be having some of these different things might be where like some pods or sub DAOs or something might really benefit, because yeah, like onboarding Web 2 journalists is going to be a million miles away from discovering tools that are actually like, journalists can use and ways to, fact check and all these things. Like the guy from, I think you said like USA Today was like, I want to do that now. How do I do it? So it's like, there's like some really big, super important things that it seems like it's going to be super hard to tackle them collectively without kind of having some like, people focusing on some areas.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm hopeful for something like the Journo token. Like, I don't know how far off it is from us all feeling good that, to like make it live or whatever, but I think that's something that's, easily understandable to, once you see it in practice, to just like a traditional journalist who's like trying to get exposure for their stories. And but then it also kind of forces them to understand what tokens are and set up a MetaMask or a wallet or something. I think there's little things like that where it's kind of our job to find these bite-sized pieces of just like, oh yeah, aha, like this works, like this actually, does something tangible. At least that's where my mind is at, like all the discussion and stuff in my mind is just to get at like, okay, what can we do like next? Like what's the next small step we can take to get towards that goal? And I think with resources, it's unfortunately like the faster you want the resources, the more constrained like those resources are going to be towards like a targeted thing. Like we didn't do anything to get like our 3 founders really, except like talk about it a little bit and set it up. And then, those founders are like expecting like zero from us, and we can use those funds however we want. If we start going out and being like, oh yeah, this founder NFT will do this and this founder NFT will do that, then we start like making all these promises, and then like the constraints kind of come in, and then you can slowly like turn into just like supporting that use case or whatever. And so there's a huge tension right now, and I think these conversations are figuring out like, well, should we lean more this way or should we lean more that way? Or are we like in balance for like the world as we see it now versus our skills and resources? But it does seem like each week we get into like a better position. Like the people who are showing up are few, but they're sticking around and they're contributing. And yeah, I don't know, but I think it's up to, like, you have this perspective, and I think it's like forcing us to go in a direction that we wouldn't otherwise go, and for the better. Like we need people who are gonna like light the fire and say like, well, yeah, what are we actually doing? Like, let's do something like right now. So
And to be clear, like I think what you guys are doing right now is good. Just to be clear, like I'm not trying to say like I think all of this stuff is like great,
we're doing comrade.
and like I think that the Journo token thing is like awesome, and that is exactly the sort of thing that if it can be implemented and show use cases, that is something that I can explain to a journalist. Like, here is this thing right here, right now. Here is how it can work. You know, and to kind of just get back to this, like onboarding, like a large problem is that I've had with talking with some of the journalists is, yeah, it's like, if I can even get them to the point where they're willing to hear me out about Web3, then I've got a situation where it's like, okay, well, what is it going to do? How is it going to help me? And I'm like, well, we're still trying to figure that out. It's like collections of this stuff that people are actually doing, so that we have, you know, examples of X, Y, or Z, like journalism, but maybe we are, and so maybe those people that I'm trying to talk to convince, it's just like, not yet, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. It's just like, I've personally started to just say, this isn't my battle. Like, just you'll come around, but it's not me. Like, it's not this conversation that's going to get you there. So just don't worry about it. You'll hear about it whenever you do, and you'll find the thing. You'll use the Facebook of Web3 at some point.
And I mean, there's like serious value to these like funny trips that we're making to go talk to these people, like that. When I was talking about being at that Web3 roundtable that John was in, I mean, I think you were there, John. You know, there's like a few moments. We're in this room where the conversation on the other side of the room was like all FUD and like just people kind of arguing about like basically that conversation that you're talking about, John Nicholas, where it's like, well, what can it do for me? Like, how is it any different? Like, that conversation's happening on the other side of the room, where the table that John Miller and I were at, where, you know, we're talking to people from, you know, like USA Today and ProPublica and these other institutions that were just really trying to understand the basics. And we got to a point after like an hour where they're like the idea of like decentralization like finally got through to them. And John is like giving the example about, you know, Chainlink and oracles and like using that to, you know, verify the authenticity of content. And like you do see the realization of the possibility like dawn over these people's eyes. And it is like, it's like one at a time, you know. And I think it's like kind of frustrating and slow, but like it is worth it to have those conversations when people's minds are open to it, and then they do start to get it. And it's like we got one more, I think, you know.
Yeah, a lot of these people are treating crypto in Web3 like it's misinformation, you know, and so they're constantly trying to approach it from a "we got to debunk this first" approach.
I actually think oracles might be a good thing to focus in on, because that's just like something that you can see that, like, as a journalist, if you've ever had to like license data access from a central like authority, it's easy to like make the case that like, wouldn't that be better if it was open and like and that no one person could like shut it down or deny you access or anything like that.
Oracles were the first concept that I really understood in crypto that really got me hooked, besides just transactions. Once I understood oracles, I was like, oh yeah, of course, you know.
You know, the only reason we pivoted away from the language of talking about oracles is the Ripple case happened, and then everybody stopped talking about it. Like, oh, just kidding, we weren't doing that. That's because nobody wants to like go to prison. Or you know, I knew a guy that he's a family friend on my girlfriend's side. They've been like, you know, he's been there since she was a little kid, and they moved out of the state that I live in to live elsewhere when that case started. because the whole company had no idea it was going to happen. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of legal questions around the existence of cryptocurrency startup companies, and nobody knows. I promise. I checked. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. No one. The lawyers don't know.
Yeah,
The companies don't know.
nobody.
The policymakers don't know. And because of that, everybody's in this hyper fragile state. So the language pivots with whatever they think is permissible, and that's where the marketing misinformation does actually misinform people because it's designed to protect the companies. But it creates a lot of weird, I guess weird truisms that are bullshit in crypto. Like it's not a security. I'm sorry, that's not. I cannot find a way that's not. Read the SEC's definition of what security is.
Yeah.
It's policy dependent. It depends on who's in office. It can change on a dime. Like
Right.
whoever controls the SEC controls what goes on, and that's just the way it's set up. It's set up for you to fail.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point, right?
What was the involvement of Oracle's with Ripple? I'm forgetting that.
So Ripple is a platform that allows you to peg something to something else. Therefore, it's a securities platform. Chainlink, one of the things that Chainlink allows you to do is peg assets to APIs. So if, like, for example, when I worked at that NFT startup that I told you about, the idea was actually to use Chainlink's service to peg NFTs to the real estate index for price. So that it would shift the price for the NFT based on what the real estate index said that day. So that the land we were buying it's out of our control. It's not a secondary market affected thing. But by definition, it's absolutely violating the Howey test. It's totally a security. And I spent 3 months trying to answer that question. I guess it is. So in our case, it was. But I can't find many exceptions except Bitcoin and Ethereum only because the head of the SEC said so. Yeah.
Sorry, Ripple is. I thought Ripple was for remittances. It sounds what you're describing sounds like synthetics.
Well, Ripple was expanding their business before the lawsuit came out.
Okay.
And like the architecture was there in place, and they're making business deals with that being the part of the business. I don't know if this is like a company secret or anything. I don't think so. I think it's out there.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know that they were trying to make it, the goal to be the one world currency, and that's what all the XRP army is banking on. That they're going to be hoarding the next world currency in their banks.
Yeah. Well, that's like the possibility of somebody not being an accredited investor and making money off of Ripple without a license is fundamentally why they're in court. But it's also basically because they're the biggest securities platform they could find outside of Ethereum and Bitcoin, which are kind of untouchable because of how they're designed.
And did or does Ripple use Chainlink? Is that what the specific one that they?
I don't know if they do or don't.
Or did they have their own? Or I'm just curious. So Oracles were like the last thing I understood. I feel like I only understood them like 3 weeks ago. So I'm just like,
Well, CoinGecko uses Chainlink as its Oracle.
Okay.
For their price.
Before that, it was CoinMarketCap. Like Oracles are like when there was just one. There was this issue for exchanges of what if Oracles lie about the price to like scrape money from these crypto projects because they know when the price goes up and down. And now that there's more than one, and they have, well, now that there's like statistical ways to like, okay, we'll take every exchange's price. There's like hundreds of them. We'll average them together, pick a median from a list, something that's more random and less trusted third party. Yeah. That's as much as I know.
Yeah, and people confuse Chainlink for it being a blockchain. Chainlink's not a blockchain. Chainlink is like the purpose of the token is to pay people that run the nodes for gathering the information.
And like acting in good faith.
Yeah.
Not fucking everything up.
When if they ever go down, like that could actually be the end of a lot of crypto projects. They've become integral to like the infrastructure, kind of like Amazon.
Yeah, tons of DeFi projects, and Synthetics also uses Chainlink, and just there's a whole plethora of DeFi projects out there that use Chainlink.
Yeah, if you want to take down DeFi, go after Chainlink. If you want to take down Ethereum, go after the exchanges because they own all the nodes. Like there's arguments there that those are the points of failure that the system relies on and kind of they prop it up.
And some use band protocol and Telor, I think. Is it Telor? Yeah.
I
The
don't
other
know
one-
about Teller, I know about
yeah.
Band.
But yeah, there's band, and I think the other one is Telor. And those are the three competing oracles, but Chainlink definitely has most of the market share.
And in a way, the exchanges that feed the Oracle's price data, they have some amount of say on that because they do so much, bullshit like wash trading and trading against their competitors, selling order flow, all that stuff. Anyway, yeah, that all comes into like who determines the price. It's not really the market, it's the market makers, and it's the people that sell on secondary marketplaces, and Oracle all together as one. On the funding stuff that Eric was talking about, I did want to mention, Eric, if you want to do a call where I can rant about this for a fixed amount of time, so it's not a 3-hour conversation, but I have some thoughts on how we might be able to get money for doing more journalism stuff. I do think there's interest, and I do think that some of the bigger players in the space have analysts that know how to do like data journalism and crypto, and not exclusive to what I'm doing, but also just generally trying to educate people as a public good for advocacy. It's almost like if crypto is a cult, you're an evangelist, just generally spreading the good word of this is not a scam. And most of the time you're lying and you don't know it. That's how crypto is weird, I think. There are a lot of scams, like a lot more than people think there are. And the more you look, the worse it gets. But there are technical innovations going on, which you cannot describe without talking about computer science. It doesn't work. So until those platforms exist and you can hold an iPod up and say, look, I can listen, and I just carry it around with me, and it's like a, it's like a tape player, but it's way better. They won't get it. And if traditional journalists are still learning to use Discord, I think there's a good argument that we're still learning how technology is shaping how we digest information fundamentally. And journalists haven't even solved how Twitter is going to fuck up their news stories. So how can we expect them to take other leaps into computer science land and join us on our journey while we decide for ourselves what is and isn't good information? I think that's probably asking too much, but the competitive and censorship resistant aspects of it, those are true and they do work and they already exist. It's just reinforcing to journalists that they're not going to get taken away, because that's what happened after the internet became politicized. You have to teach people that history of how the internet became cracked down in the late 2000s, same time that Aaron Schwartz was advocating, to stop SOPA. Everybody was talking about SOPA and PIPA and piracy. And that was started by lobbying in the music industry. If you don't know that whole history and how it did actually effectively oligopolize the internet, then it kind of changes your perspective. And it's a really ridiculously convoluted explanation. So I think telling that story and then pivoting to Bitcoin as being the second version of the internet, trying to return to that promised land golden age of not that long ago, that's probably the best way to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, journalists got like destroyed by Craigslist, so that doesn't ensure much confidence. But you mean like, so you mean like explaining, like, is the journalism side of it like explaining a lot of that history and background, or are you talking about like more like exposing some of the scams now, or both?
I think both. I think it depends on the goals of the journalist. I think in general, the goal is still to like keep the businesses alive and afloat by getting more engagement. So they're trapped in this vicious cycle of being overworked and underpaid, and they don't have time to think. Not to be glib, but like that, I see that as kind of being the situation. The people that are still in that game, which I've never been in and have no experience in, I'm talking out my ass.
No, you're describing my life. So
I've been there. I was working in a factory farm lab, less than a year ago. So that's like educating people only matters if they see it as an opportunity instead of a sales pitch. And in crypto, it's usually a sales pitch, and there's no way to not make it sound like one, because it is one. So you have to talk about the fundamental aspects of how it gives you something that you otherwise wouldn't have. And for the most part, that barely exists right now, in truth. So you're having a philosophical conversation about things that may or may not someday materialize, which is great for journalists when you're drinking, but it's not so great when they're trying to like pivot careers or, stake the reputation that this is not a scam. So building better credibility into the data journalism model, That's kind of why I really want to get OCCRP, because they have a lot of credibility. They worked on a lot of the biggest data journalism stories in the world. And for some reason, they're willing to meet with me, and maybe after that, I'll never hear from them again. But if they listen, like if somebody, if I find one guy that listens, that's like in a position of authority, I'm going to find him. And
You know what this sounds like? This sounds like another podcast project for you, me, and John.
I was doing a podcast with Mass before I quit. I think they interviewed Vitalik Buterin after I left too, because my co-host, he started following my co-host on Twitter like a month later. It's really strange.
They're like,
Weird.
we have to find some sort of a name on equal footing with Nick to replace him. So they had to get Vitalik. That must have been it.
I want to get Danny O'Brien a second time because he was great. And he was at the forefront of the crypto advocacy space, and I had no idea who he was until Suji introduced him to me.
Spencer actually suggested him earlier.
That's probably because I won't shut
Oh
up.
no,
about
you
it.
did. Oh, you suggested him. Okay.
That's also me.
Okay.
His first wife left him for Aaron Schwartz's girlfriend before he killed himself. It's the girl in the documentary.
Wow.
So like he's very in the bones of he also used to hang out in the basement of the guy that invented BitTorrent. He's super in the weeds, in the trenches. He's been doing this forever. And now he works for Filecoin with playing around with the grant money. So
Wait, which
he'd be a
guy- who
really
is
cool
this?
person. Danny
Who is
O'Brien.
Oh, that's Danny O'Brien. Okay.
Yeah, he was director at Electronic Frontier Foundation for over 10 years. And he still advises there. So he's got a lot of clout.
And
And
he's
he's
at
very
Filecoin
knowledgeable.
now?
He's at File. He invented a branch of Filecoin that he controls. It's their grants program. It's called File. It's very confusing. There's Filecoin, which I said in my interview with him, and it's wrong. And there's Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web. So there's Filecoin Foundation, which is one grant arm, and then Danny O'Brien's is the second long sentence I just said.
Have you come across
FFD Web.
this other guy? I'm trying to find Matthew Freilich. Is that
Never
him?
heard his name.
Okay. He is at Filecoin Foundation, and his job is to like work to research funding of public goods. I wonder, I would bet that they're tied in with each other.
They have to be, yeah. They don't have a huge team over there, even though they seem like they do.
I could, I could envision a podcast, like just a series of podcast conversations that's like it's like the 21st century history of media. So basically that's like everything you're talking about. It's like history of media from like the dot-com boom on.
This is what I wanted to do with the other podcast, but like I couldn't get my co-host to go with it. But yeah, that was my initial, like that you'd be doing the podcast I wanted to do. So it's fine if that's not the final product and this is all just talk, but I would do that tomorrow.
Okay. All right, let's continue a discussion about that.
And
My
Keith, I
family-
did think about that as a business model that would work.
I know. I mean,
We're
it
turning in the wallets.
probably work, but if they're paying out, it would work.
Some people won't apply to get their money back. I know they won't because they can't.
Yeah.
They're not going to give the SEC their address and their
Yeah.
driver's license. So.
Well, I was going to say, like, kind of getting closer to the metal in all things like organizational and business with crypto and just getting into this space. It's kind of a miracle that like really any industry runs as well as it does, or any institution, because I'm not sure there's anything unique to crypto as far as like corruption and scams go. Like, I'm just kind of, instead of it being like, oh, I see a lot of this in crypto and that's different, it's like, oh, I see a lot of this in crypto and oh yeah, that's like everywhere else too. And like startups are basically just Ponzi schemes that like we all believe in enough so that they don't collapse, but most of them do actually. And then like
the ones that don't become Facebook, which arguably is not any better
Yeah.
either. Like there's the value versus extraction is
yeah.
tremendous.
And so when you see how well things have been working from a coordination aspect, and for the people who don't really pay attention to this stuff and like how the sausage is made, it's kind of amazing because like I don't know, if you take the surface level, things like work pretty well, like remarkably well. But then if you just go like a little bit below the surface and like how many things are like hinged upon like this one person just doing this one thing right, like this one time. And if you didn't do that, then like the whole thing would have collapsed or whatever. And then from the outside, you're just like walking into a bank and you're taking out money and then you leave or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know, that's what's bothered me more than like how much of that is in crypto is just how much of that's everywhere else. I don't know if there's like a way to use that point or if that's even true, but like that's my perception of things.
Yeah, I've had that conversation, and I think it boils down to how do you turn, like, because that is a cynical perspective, but it might be closer to the truth than what people think. So how do you turn a cynical perspective that is true, probably, in my opinion, is true? How do you make that not so depressing and make it interesting for people? And I think the way you do that is you find ways to make the truth have more value than the scams. And one way to do that is to, yeah, turn in people that are, vulnerable because they're doing scammy shit. They should be turned in, and showing like how learning those skills can actually get you further than if you were to just continue to comply, just fall in line. But that is a sales pitch too. So that's just a theory at this point.
Yeah, I think all you have to do is talk to somebody about like where they work and if it's like a good place to work or not, or if it works well as like an organization. And the fact that you like talk to 150 friends and like probably 140 of them are just going to say, oh, this is the worst place like I've ever worked. It's terrible, because they see all the flaws because they're like inside. And then, from the outside, everyone thinks that's like a great company or like great service, great product or whatever. And then you talk to the people who work there and there's like, it's a miracle this stuff even like gets out the door.
That's true. I think it's very it's a way to personalize something that's kind of an unpleasant truth about like the environment we're in with the economy and everything. So I see that as kind of like, that's a way in to make it entertaining and gamify the process of educating people, without making them cynical.
Yeah. But I think I gotta hop off now too, guys.
Yeah, me too.
But I do like having this open-ended discussion for people who can.
Yeah,
stick
I
around.
loved it, truly. Very, very open and wanting to listen to you guys talk more.
Well, next week then.
Be around. See you guys.
Bye.